If you haven't watched the first 3 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 3, go and do that first, then come back here and let's talk about it. I am super excited to be covering the first bit of new Star Wars since I started my channel, and even more excited that it's the 3rd and final season of The Bad Batch. I'll admit it, in the beginning, it took me a while to come around to these Star Wars animated shows. I had nothing against them, I just thought they were for kids and I looked right past them. I've never been so happy to admit that I was wrong. I jumped in to see the Maul and Obi-Wan showdown on Tatooine, and then I devoured all of it several times over. The Bad Batch was the first one that I was ready for as it debuted. Season 3 is unfortunately the final season. It premiered today, February 21st on Disney+. They dropped 3 episodes at once that work really well together. With a little bit of editing, it could have been a really solid 90-minute movie as the premiere. I would have inserted some of the action of the 2nd episode through the 1st and the 3rd, where it's a little bit more somber, but I'm jumping the gun. The first of the 3-part premiere is titled Confined. Okay, I know this is a little bit of leftover from Season 2, but I just think it's so cool that Mount Tantiss was brought in from Legends. In Legends, if you don't know, it was a top-secret cloning facility that Thrawn ran. There was no Thrawn in the series, but that doesn't mean there won't be at some point. There was such a somber tone over this whole episode. The music was not the usual Star Wars fanfare that we're used to. All the colors were down. There were cool colors like a blue overtone, everything. It was all kind of dark in the grays, and it was almost jarring to go to that from such a high-octane, action-oriented series. The animation team has been doing such a great job aging Omega up and showing her maturity, both for the character development and to indicate how much time has passed. I'm not exactly sure how long it's been since the Empire grabbed her, but it didn't happen last week. There are a lot of clones being held in Mount Tantiss, and there are just as many as the guards to those clones. This has to be the inhibitor chips, as all talk of the clone brotherhood is gone. The big standout for me in this episode was Omega and her empathy. The Empire has done a lot to her, but they can't take that away. She was ripped from her chosen family. She was taken from the only home she's ever loved. She's kept a prisoner by her own brothers and sister. Whoops, that's a little embarrassing. I did a video leading up to this Bad Batch Season 3 premiere saying that Omega was the only known female clone. Not true. We have Dr. Emery Carr, who I don't trust at all, and not just because she poked a hole in my video. Omega tries to help a violent animal called a lurker hound, and not only do we get to see her big heart there, but we get yet another example of the Empire not caring about life at all. This animal for them is past its specific use as a tool and set for execution, so Omega frees it, putting herself at great risk. This really hits home when Omega gets a minute alone with Crosshair, also a prisoner, also a test subject. She's insisting she can't even try to leave until she can take him with her. He says she trusts way too easily and would leave her in a second. Now, at this point, Crosshair wouldn't. He's just trying to get her to leave him. He's punishing himself for his recent past. I think his redemption is very close at hand as he realizes he was wrong about pretty much everything he's done since Order 66. Nala Se is also at the facility. She's downtrodden as well. The Empire destroyed her home and her lab. She's being kept a prisoner to do their work. This one episode would have served as an excellent premiere all on its own, but it's great that we got 2 more. One more quick thing about this episode. I did see in the background in some scenes that this facility, it's not just running experiments on the adult soldiers and Omega, there are other kids here. I guess the adult clones are probably only 10 or 12 years old if you really want to get into it because they age twice as fast, but we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. The 2nd episode, Paths Unknown, is a major shift in tone. We get to catch up with Hunter and Wrecker, the only active members of the Bad Batch at this point. They do some work for the Durand crime family, making enemies of the Pikes. They do this in exchange for a hint at a lead to Omega's location. The pair find an older facility of Hemlock's, which Hemlock, what a cool villain, by the way. The soft-spoken sociopath. It's a great counter to the high energy of the team, and something fairly fresh in the Star Wars universe. So this facility they find was abandoned a long time ago and decimated by the Empire. All they really left behind were these sentient plants that kill anything they get too close. I loved that they ran into some younger clones. This did bring up some more dark thoughts though. How many child and baby clones did the Empire kill? Just in the destruction of Camino alone. We get some cool sequences that would be right at home in Alien or Half-Life or Dead Space. The lighting in these animated shows has gotten so good. We also get an incredibly cool monster fight where the young clones got to realize some of their potential potential. There was a little morality side story with these guys where they have to decide if they're either going to take the Marauder and leave or help out. Episode 2 had a lot less to the larger Star Wars narrative, but I did appreciate the tonal shift in the middle of 2 fairly heavy episodes. We also got to explore a cool new thread with the young clones on the run from the Empire, and of course, Hunter and Wrecker's dedication to never stopping their hunt for Omega. I did think it was kind of funny that Hunter and Wrecker are running around with these kid clones, and they're helping him out, giving him information about the galaxy, all this kind of stuff, and the clones just can't help but call them defective time and time again. I guess tact wasn't a thing that they taught on Kamino. Into episode 3, Shadows of Tantiss. We got to hear the name Project Necromancer. Palpatine himself showed up to oversee it and promised all the resources of the Empire to Hemlock as long as he can get it done. This is what Omega was bred for. In the first season of The Bad Batch, it is stated that the Kaminoans, which I have a really hard time saying, don't create anything without a purpose. Nala Se has been destroying all of Omega's blood samples, knowing that once the Empire got the results, it would be a success for the program and the end of Omega. I still think this was Grogu's original purpose in The Mandalorian until Gideon got delusions of grandeur. It was also really cool to see Palpatine come back, even more so when we got to hear Ian McDiarmid reprise the role. Omega and Crosshair work really well together. Omega's time with the Bad Batch has clearly paid off. I loved when Crosshair tossed Omega the gun. Their first big interaction, Omega shot a gun out of Crosshair's hands. I love these full circle moments. I also thought the escape itself was handled really well. Omega got to play a big role in her story without it being so unbelievable that she could do the whole thing all by herself. Crosshair got to show off his superior training and get his hands dirty fighting the clones. We also got a lot of payoff seeing Omega's prisoner routine, getting to know the lab a bit, and seeing the moving parts from the first episode come into play with things like the Lurker Hound, Nala Se, and Emery Carr. I already talked about how good the lighting has gotten in these animated series, but the whole escape and battle at night in the forest still blew me away. As it all went down, we got to see Omega throw on a backpack reminiscent of the ones the Bad Batch uses, wielding her blaster. She looked and moved every bit the soldier. It was such a great sequence. Now going forward, I don't know what I'm more pumped for. Getting confirmation on Project Necromancer or the Omega Crosshair team-up. Of course, we knew both of those things were coming, and to get them both in one episode was pretty awesome. Learning that Omega's blood is the key to the high metachlorian count in a clone body is also exciting, but since Palpatine clearly didn't have it, or at least didn't get it good enough by the time he needed it in The Rise of Skywalker, I hope that means Omega is able to run away and not that they've used all of her blood up by then. I would tend to think that means she was able to get away, because there would have been some knowledge for Dr. Pershing to go off of when he was capturing Grogu in The Mandalorian, something like 28 years later. This was a great way to kick off the last season. We got a ton of information that asked more questions than they answered, sure, and we also got some cool action. The writers are filling in gaps in the larger Star Wars narrative without it feeling clunky. Going down to 1 episode a week for the duration of the season is going to be tough, but that just means we get that much more time to enjoy everything and dive into every detail. What did you all think about this premiere episode? Any thoughts and hopes for the future? I actually have a sinking feeling that Omega will be the only one from the Bad Batch to walk into the sunset in that final episode. Check out this transmission for more on the wider Star Wars universe.